Poddin My Noggin, hosted by cksimms, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Poddin My Noggin. I'm your host, as always, cksimms, and today is the 100th episode for Poddin My Noggin. I can't believe we're here and still going and have full plans to continue to go. This is the 100th episode, and it is a momentous occasion for me for so many different reasons. When I set out to do this show, I set out with the intention of highlighting stories of people who have gone through adversity and have come out the other side defining their own version of success. I have always said since the beginning that the guest that I have today is, in my belief, the ideal guest for this show. Now, it's taken 100 episodes of convincing and conversations to make this show happen. But I am so 100% thoroughly excited and thrilled and happy to have my best friend, Cindy Cranford, on the show today. Let's get over there and start talking to her. Welcome, Bestie. Thanks for being on my show.
I didn't
So
have much
long.
choice.
You're what? Quite nervous?
I said I didn't have much choice, did I?
Well, you did. I mean, but I did, like, it's interesting because, like, I said, in the lead up to before we switched over to you that, it's only taken 100 episodes to get you here, but this is why you're the perfect guest for my show. So, yes, the last time I asked you, I think the 100th was, the good lead in. But also then I knew exactly kind of like how to apply a little bit of like that, not pressure, but sort of like how can you say no to that? Okay, pressure. But I'm hoping she doesn't say no. But, I am happy that you're here. And I want the audience to know, I asked Cindy to be here. Cindy graciously agreed to be here. And then earlier today, I realized that we were recording this episode later tonight, and I started to get super nervous. I never get nervous because it's like, we're just, and I think to myself, I'm like, how bizarre is that? Because it's you. Like,
Yeah.
I am at my most comfort with you and vice versa. But, oh man, and then leading up, like within the last half an hour, I started like beating sweats. My heart was elevated and I was like feeling like all fidgety and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But I think it's because, it is the 100th episode. I also know that it's a really big deal for you to be here because this is not your situation. This is not where you thrive or have any desire to be. So I do want to say thank you for coming and being on the show. And I said Bestie, so I think I mentioned that at the top of the show as well. I mean, I've talked about you, like not like intimately, but like intimately, I guess, throughout the last 100 episodes. I mean, you're right in a picture right there, like behind me. Like, you've been in and around Poddin My Noggin for 100 episodes. You have. I talked about you in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right? So that one made you cry, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But I think I was looking, and I said this, and I would tell the audience, I was looking at, I had my guest, 100 episodes is such a big deal for me because, like, old Curtis would never have fallen through here. But, like, I'm so dedicated to this, even though it doesn't give me, like, I don't earn anything from the show. But it's the connection with all of the people and being able to tell the stories that I love so much. And your story, although you would probably say that you don't really have a story, you're just a regular person and yada, yada, yada. I don't see it that way. Never have. And to me, you have always been like a hero to me, always, without question. In so many different... Pardon?
I won't roll my eyes here.
Well, fine, but yes, you can. I want you to be you, but like, there's so many levels as well as to why you've been a hero to me. One of the primary ones, like it was
Yes,
you in a very big way. I know I played the part and had to do the work. 'Cause this is how
you
you
did,
tell me all the time.
of
But like,
course.
it was you in such a big way that got me to where I am today. This person that I've become that I'm proud of. But there's so many different things. So like for me, I look at your life and you're internally rolling your eyes. I can tell right now. I look at your life and I think to myself, I'm like, not many people could do what you do and what you did. And like literally take yourself and completely change everything that was pitted against you. And you did have a lot of stuff pitted against you when you were younger. And when I met you the first time and we shared that beautiful bond, you were 16, I was 18. We met on top of, just as an FYI to people, and I don't know how many listeners we have on Newfoundland or we've been to Newfoundland, but I don't even know if it's still there, but Atlantic Place.
It's still there.
Yeah, it's a parking lot with the top floor.
Parking garage.
Yeah, and I remember you just being this absolutely stunningly beautiful girl, because you were only 16 at the time, young woman, and you were sad
Mm-hmm.
at that time. And something about the two of us, I guess, we just kind of clicked, and the rest is really history, if you want to look at it that way. But so for me, I have been telling you, I think for as long as I've known you, that you are an inspiration and a success story. And I want to talk about that today because I am a firm believer that we learn to grow and stretch and step outside of what we believe is possible from inspiration from others often. Like when we can see ourselves in somebody else and we're like, wait a second, I'm kind of like that. Like, could I have this as well? So I'm a firm believer in that. And because of that, I've always wanted you to come on the show and talk about everything. And you will get to talk, I promise.
And this is fine by me.
I know it is. But yeah, but I think I just want to stop real quick before we continue because I just think, like, I'm just really happy that you're here. Like, this is a big moment for me.
Thank
I
you.
know
I am
you
happy to be here.
too. Pardon? Good. I do believe that you are. I know that you are. You wouldn't be here if you didn't really want to be. Like, if you really didn't want to be, is what I meant to say.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's super cool as well that I get to have this opportunity to sit with you and have this discussion and hopefully by, segment 2, you're less nervous and a little bit more relaxed. Maybe me too. I'm still like just a degree away from sweating bullets still. But okay, so full disclosure to audience at home, Cindy is the queen of excessive modesty. She would never come out and tell you that, like, she's not like the person that would be like, look at what I did with my life. She has always been the type of person to discount and discredit her achievements and things that she's done in her life. And I am the bestie who will not let her. I won't, because I do think the moon, rises and sets in her eyes and all of that gushy, weird shit. But like, I've always been that way. So do you have anything you'd like to say before we begin?
No, I don't
Any
think so. Pardon?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, as difficult as this is for me, I am really happy to be here. And I'm very proud of what you've done with this podcast and what you've done with your own life. Yeah. So I'll say thank you for twisting my arm and all that. Anyway.
I love this. Okay. So to set it up, I want people to understand where Cindy is today. Actually, like, who is Cindy today? How would you define her at this moment?
Wow.
And it's okay if you're stuck. I'll fill in gaps if I need to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm very stuck because to define anyone in just a couple of sentences or a few minutes feels just impossible. So I guess it depends on really, and I sort of think, what are you looking for? Because I am a university graduate, I'm a college graduate, I'm a friend, I'm a wife, all kinds of things that wrap in to make me who I am, but not one single thing defines me.
Of
So I
course.
feel like I'm complicated and I'm simple and I'm scared and I'm nervous.
Okay,
So
fine.
I feel like that is an impossible question to answer. So who
That is
Cindy is
that,
today
that is
is,
good.
yeah, yeah.
So Cindy today is actually a highly successful manager of a university library. Okay. She has.
Manager of finance and administration, not of
Okay,
the entire
sorry. Yes,
library.
so
Yeah.
she'll dial me back if I get too So, but like she manages the finance and administration for the university library, a very large one, and she is married. She has two doggos. You're in working with like your masters, and you're doing graduate degree work and all of those particular things. You're located in Newfoundland. You live with your husband, your two dogs. I said that already, and so many different things. Like I could just go on and on and on and on and on, right? Like so, just looking at the where you're at sort of situation. Now I want to go back to where you were, and I think that that's the part that I love, and I want to spend time here. So I think the best place to start is when you were like 9 years old.
Taking it way back.
Because I would go way back because I feel like that those particular things shape us, right?
I do.
And they kind of help add context to how certain things come to be. But share what you feel comfortable with, and we'll go from there.
When I was 9, I was living what I would consider a very common life. My parents were married. I was a great student, really great marks. At one point, when I was around that age, they were considering sort of pushing me ahead a grade, ticking along, playing with my Barbies, doing what kids do. And then that was the year that my mother, who is a survivor of incest, was taking her father to court for said crimes. And it was really, it took me a long time to recognize, but that was definitely the point when life changed for me. From there followed years of chaos and confusion and just a lot of things that a 9-year-old did not understand. It was around that time that I developed an eating disorder. Within a couple of years, my parents were divorced, living with my mother. From the student who excelled in school, that all very quickly deteriorated. And by grade 9, so when it was the end of grade 9, I was on tried to go back in grade 10. I dropped out of high school, so I
Yeah.
was 16. And from there, things just got really bad with excessive drug use, pretty serious suicide attempt, followed by multiple other suicide attempts, some psychiatric hospitalizations. Just, yeah, a great big dumpster fire that we could probably spend 3 hours, and I've spent 20 years in therapy untangling. So,
Well, yes, and I think what's interesting there too is that I had a point, and my nervousness made me go out the window. Give me a second. Give me a second, because I think being 9 years old and it was complete upheaval for you.
absolutely.
Like and from our perspective now, because I would liken the both of us to be people who are still on our healing journey, but we've done a lot of healing work. From our
Yeah,
perspective now, looking back, it makes
of course.
absolute 100% sense, right? Like
Absolutely.
there's nothing bizarre about like how that played out because of like hello, because just for people like we won't spend a lot of time on that, but yes, her mom took her grandfather to court because of incest. It was highly publicized in Newfoundland. There was a documentary created about it.
He
And it
was
was just one.
convicted.
He was convicted. He spent time in jail. So did the mother. They're
She
both
did
dead
spend time in
now.
jail.
Oh, she didn't spend time in jail?
No,
Okay,
she's
well, they're both dead now. Yeah, so they're both dead now, and I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but we're better off for not having them here anymore because her mother is a gem of a human being. I love her, always have, and always will. But to have that happen, it wasn't to you, but you were experiencing it. Your mom went through a rough time there. Obviously, there was strain on the marriage during that period of time, which, as you imagine, would happen. Then the upheaval of the normal life that you were living, because, like you said, you classified and categorized yourself as being like just an all-around normal person at that point. And then, but then
I said average
you
or
said
something.
pardon,
I didn't use normal, but yes.
average. Okay, so, but
Whatever
then
I said.
you were also living, like, I think it's important to say at the time, you were living in a small rural part of Newfoundland versus where you ended up, which was the city, which is St. John's, Mount Pearl area.
Well, when the trial began, we were in St. John's. So we
Oh,
moved, yeah, we moved to a rural town after mom was diagnosed with cancer because she believed that she wanted her children to be near family. It was the only reason we ever moved there, really.
I'm learning something new. It's been like 25 years of this relationship.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
I knew you lived in St. John's with the whole family. Okay, so there's dots clicking now. Okay, fine. So then you moved out to the little house in the rural part of town. And so then you were in the rural. So, okay, yep. All right. But then you went back to St. John's Mount Pearl after everything sort of fallen apart at that point because
Yeah,
you had
after
a.
the divorce, mom stayed in the rural town for a little while and then she eventually went back to the city. And then I sort of bounced between both parents for a little while because I would just get angry and I hate you and I'm going with you. And that cycle went on for a little while.
Yes. And you brought up, one big suicide attempt and other smaller ones. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, intersections of how you and I developed such a bond.
Absolutely.
And we don't have to get into that because I don't want to. But like, that was the scariest moment of my life because I was
So you were
there.
there.
I was there. I witnessed this happening in the aftermath of that happening. And I, as people who watch the show know, was just this very sheltered white boy from very rural Newfoundland. Like, I did not have any form of exposure to anything at all. So, you know, that whole experience has always lived with me and never ever left. But super grateful that you're still here, right? Always grateful for that. And that, I think, is where, because I was always fuzzy about when the dropout happened and when I came into the picture and then when I left the picture. And then because there were so many things that happened. Because even though, because I left the picture just not like in a we stopped talking because we were mad at each other sort of way. I moved to a different part of the country in just space and time. And then that's fine. But like, I always get a little fuzzy because in that, I think it was about 7 or 8 months, we packed in
A lot.
a lot of time, memories, like so many things. And you had just sent me a few nights ago, actually, a picture of me when I was 18 years old in your kitchen. And I'm like, holy moly.
It's like
Like,
a lifetime ago.
yeah, I'm like, I knew nothing then.
Yeah.
I thought I did. But I knew nothing. When you were younger, I think the piece that always stuck with me is that you had given up on yourself. But not
Absolutely.
just not just you, pretty much almost everybody else as well. There were only one, two, three people in your life that never gave up on you.
Always my
Right.
mom, first and foremost, number one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But
She's
yeah,
always been.
I was the one in the family that was the tail for the cousins. You don't want to be like her. You don't want to turn out like her. You don't want to make the mistakes that she's made. Absolutely, 100%.
What do you remember about 16-year-old Cindy? Like, when you think of her, what's the first thing that sort of pops out to you?
Oh, just want to reach out and give her a hug. Um, she's just really lost. She
She
was
might have
so,
slapped you if you tried to hug her, but
oh, absolutely, absolutely. She was fine. She was fine. She was fine. Yeah, that's story I've always told myself that it's not that bad. I'm fine. Dismissive, dismissive, dismissive. Um, I recognize now that that comes from the horrors that my mother went through.
Mhm.
How could I say anything about my life? How I never allowed myself to have any space. People would say, "Poor Cindy, the difficult time she was going through," and I would be angry. Like, how dare you say that? I'm fine. And looking back on it now, how could I be fine? How.
It's impossible. It's impossible because the your life was just turbulent, right? If I were to say, think of 16-year-old Cindy, I have a similar sort of viewpoint. I remember 16-year-old Cindy being sad,
All
but
the time.
fighting so hard not to be because
Absolutely.
you threw yourself into everything that you did wholeheartedly. And whether those were great things or bad things or good things or smart things or not, that's neither here nor there. I just remember you always having sort of this passion, this drive, but I think it was at that time trying to chase away the demons, if you
Absolutely.
will, right? And
And
you,
trying to find validation wherever I could. If I think back to my 16-year-old self compared to myself now, as one of the key things is that just the constant need for external validation. Never once understanding or being able to comprehend the difference between internal, external validation. There was nothing that my brain was going to do to convince me that I was good enough. So I looked externally for that. But of course, I mean, I can look back and understand that now. But when you're constantly searching for external validation and that's the only way that you can find value, you will never find enough. No matter who is in your life, no matter who, you have always been my rock, my supporter, my cheerleader. But until I could see it in myself, it's like you're blowing in the wind. So when I
vice versa.
think of 15-year-old version, if there's anything that I can remember about how I felt, it was just the constant message of you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And that is what drove the drug use, it's what drove the suicide attempt, it's what drove the interesting relationships that I had with men through the years. It's what drove all of my friendships, my codependencies. It's that
That's a
I'm
buzzword.
not good enough. So how do I do something, find something that proves that I'm good enough?
We're gonna get to that. But like, what did we like? I love this though because I'm thinking to myself like, you definitely tried
Hmm.
a whole gamut of things to prove that you were good enough,
Absolutely. And
but
truth be
always
told, I'm still constantly doing the same thing. I just have a better understanding of it now. And I'm able to find strength within now that I couldn't or didn't know back then.
if you could give 16-year-old Cindy one thing from you, whether it's material or say a characteristic that you have right now, what would it be?
That I currently have right now, the ability to make decisions for myself, decisions that make me happy and not be I call myself a recovering people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
And I spend so much of my own life making myself unhappy to try to please people. And the truth is, you never do anyway. No matter what you do, it never really works.
It never really works because, and I think that is a whole another podcast, really, if you think about it, because we talk about boundaries and all that sort of thing all the time. And it's just, if you don't have them, it becomes a super slippery slope. And people just start expecting you to do all of the things that you always did with no questions or no sort of reluctance at all. Cindy will do it. And that's it just becomes so heavy after a while because
Yeah.
you only have so much to give. So I love that. So do you think that Cindy, if you were to take that from Cindy now and put it in Cindy in 16, do you think her life would have changed or shifted in any way?
But it's
Do you think,
completely changed because
but
it's
do you,
what drove me.
but do you know if she would know how to use it? But
So
you can't give her a precursor and say like, this is the gift I'm giving you, and this is how you like this is your operational instructions. Like if you just transplanted it into Cindy,
If
do
I
you
just
think?
transplanted it with her understanding how to use it, her whole life would have been different.
Yeah,
But if I transplanted it without any instructions, I think that it would have brought more pain because I think that setting boundaries for someone who seeks external validation can be very painful. So if all of a sudden you just do it without understanding, oh, I'm not being mean. I should value myself enough to care what I think. If you don't have all of those thoughts to go with it, then it would just be an absolute nightmare, I would think.
that is extremely profound,
Mm.
actually. Because if you think about what you just said, you're correct. So if I asked myself that same question and I said, okay, I'm going to give that Curtis my knowledge of knowing that it's always going to be okay, regardless of what's happening in life. You are always going to be okay. And not anything else. Just implied that into his. Oh, I think I'd be in jail.
Well, probably.
Yeah, I think I'd be in jail or dead in a ditch somewhere because
Something real.
yeah, because I'm like yeah. So I never thought about that. I really love that because it's just you would give them something that could completely screw with everything. And you're right. People who are people pleasers who require external validation, even thought of putting in a boundary is like,
It's actually painful.
hmm, absolutely. I'm mindful of the time. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Partner today with cksimms and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we were talking to my best friend, Cindy, and we were talking about Cindy's life before. And I can tell that her nervous system has started to stabilize since we started talking. Mine has too. And we've been talking just about like the early days of Cindy, right? And I think the point is you started to sort of relax and give me more and those particular things. I think the point I want to make is that you started out in life having an average life,
Yes.
excelling in school, all of those things. Then you witnessed the most ugly upheaval of life and humanity because like while they tried to shelter you, you were also always a very bright person. So you probably kind of understood what was going on some level, whether it was told to
Oh,
you.
absolutely. And they explained it to us and they put us in therapy and did all the things that they did their best, but it's an awful thing to understand at that age.
Absolutely. And then the destruction of the nuclear family, right? So then, because piled on top of all of that, moving in, feeling dejected from normal life, if you will, trying to learn coping mechanisms while you're learning this new way of life, you know, with your mom as a single mother, bouncing back and forth between parent and parent because you were lashing out on all of those things. 16, having a suicide attempt, and you told me a story. Well, you told me many times, and I love this story, and I'm just going to tell it. But I remember, like when you were younger, you would walk or drive past a specific university and just kind of dream, but like immediately like just brush it off. That's never going, like
Yes.
I'm never going to have that. And so I said it before, you had just a couple people in your life who never gave up on you, but mostly everybody else had pretty much counted you out based on the, I think the other part of it that I guess we're not painting super well is that you were kind of volatile in that age bracket, but
Oh,
not
absolutely.
right. So there wasn't stability in your life internally or externally, and you like to party, as did I at that time. FYI, sheltered kid, meeting a girl who likes to party in St. John's, like that was a whole hoot and handy, and it was amazing. But yes, like to party. You said you had done your drugs and all of those things. Your questionable relationships, but everybody has questionable
Absolutely.
relationships and your questionable goals for life,
Yeah.
right? But you just didn't you everything that you were dreaming of that was more than what was right in front of you. You always just kind of dismissed as being just that, a dream. It could never actually come and happen.
Wasn't for me. Yeah. Those
Yes,
things.
and there's been so many things, even in our friendship and the time that we've been together as besties, that there's been things that weren't for you, but are now very much in your sphere of life. So all of that happens. I leave to move across the country. That doesn't switch things up. I think your mom tried to convince someone to like take you away from Newfoundland, and that was the only way it was going to work out. And that happens, right? And that young man just happens to be your husband today, right? And you move up to Ontario, and you're doing your thing in Ontario. So I want you to tell me, when was the moment after you moved to Ontario? You sort of stabilized a little bit because your environment was very different, right? When was the moment that you realized you actually wanted more and believed you deserved and could achieve more? Because there had to be a moment.
I certainly cannot think of a particular moment when that happened, because even as I went through it. So for some, you know, backstory, I guess I was working in a job, I got laid off, and it was in that moment that I realized, I was working in a factory. So when I lost that factory job, which was a good paying job with good benefits, I remember someone saying to me when I got the job, I was so excited to be permanent, and they said, "Yeah, that'll do until you find something, decent." And I remember thinking, this is as good as it gets. This is it. So when I lost that job, the realization of I don't have a high school diploma really started to set in. So that was in my mid 20s, I suppose.
Early to mid, yes.
Yeah, I guess it was more early. Yeah,
23,
early.
20.
Yeah. And then I happened to find another job in an office environment. So I was pretty excited about that. And then, sorry, nope.
Yeah, you skipped a whole
I
section.
completely forgot.
I was waiting for you to come back, but I was like,
Yeah,
okay, give her a
no.
moment.
So I lost that factory job, and then I decided it was time to do grade 12. And at the time, I was faced with, do I want a GED or do I want to actually go and finish my grade 12? So I felt really strongly that I wanted to actually go and get my high school credits, because I felt that if I wanted to do any post secondary, not having that foundation just kind of would set me up for failure. So from there, I had applied for a grant basically to fund some post secondary education, and I was denied. And I thought, well, forget this. I'll show you. And there was never a moment, and you know this even well into my university degree, there was never a moment where there was a great plan. I would have whims of, oh, I think I want to do this, or oh, I think I want to do that. People would ask me, so then I go back a little bit. I went to college and I said, okay, I'll just register for a course. But I was too scared, and you, held my hand, took me to the registrar's office, paid for my course, and even attended the first few classes with me because I was so scared and so intimidated. And from there, it was always just taking a course. Like I knew that I didn't have the financial resources to be able to go in full time. So through all of my college diploma, there was always the drive I think came from there's got to be better out there. I just don't know what it is. So
Mm.
even through all of those experiences, not once did it ever dawn on me that I'm good enough and I deserve this. It always felt like I have to do this to protect myself. I have to do this to set myself up. And then when I left Ontario and came back to university and realized that university was much more affordable in Newfoundland, and I was very lucky to get a job in that university. So the whole time throughout my degree, people would say, "What are you going to do when you're finished?" Because I worked full time and I would do the degree part time. And I would always say, I don't know." And I think in hindsight, looking back on it now, I always felt that having that university degree was finally going to show me and the world that I was finally good enough. And it did not do that. Not for 1 second did it ever do that. And it was finally when I finished that degree and started on my master's, and that still wasn't good enough, that I really started to realize that I always said a person's job didn't define them, and I always said a person's education did. I believe that at my core. But to realize that I have been working for 15 years towards this thing that I thought was going to make me good enough, and it didn't. There was so much more behind it. And I really think that it was my undergrad convocation when I finally started to clue in, realize that it's not these things that are making me good enough or worth it or better. So, it was there was no one moment where I went, oh, I'm good enough and I deserve this now. I was always fueled and I was driven by that need to be worth it.
Mm.
In a weird way, going through all of these things and none of them working is what made me realize that I am worth it and that I do deserve love and life and happiness and all those things. And I think if anything, my final convocation, which was only May this year,
May this
uh,
year.
that whole experience, you were here, you know how emotional it was for me. I almost said, absolutely not, I'm not even going to press the stage because I felt so worthless. It is,
And
yeah.
it was always that's always been such a pain point for me because it drove me nuts. Cindy failed to mention a few things of the trajectory of, when she decided, I'm like, I have to go get my high school diploma. So, yeah, so she did go get her high school diploma, not her GED. Killed it with like impeccable marks. Want to point this out. So, this is a high school dropout. So, there was a gap in there where very turbulent, all of those things. But when she went back to university or back to school, period, she realized that that 9-year-old smart girl actually still exists in her. Now, whether you had that conscious thought or
Yeah,
not,
definitely not.
and I imagined you didn't, because I think you're showing to everybody that you discount everything you do, but that's fine. I'm going to fill in some gaps. So she went back to school, got her high school diploma. I'm throwing this in for a little bit of giggles. During that particular time, I re entered her life. We were having a pen war on a Saturday, and I called a truce because she was using a pen that had a really long tip and was gouging skin out of me. Vindictively, I was like, I'm calling a truce so you can stop gouging me, but I'm going to get you one last time. And I did. And in that process, she chased me down the stairs, and that led to her breaking her tib and fib. And I think there was one in the foot as
And the
well that
foot,
healed
yeah,
itself
yeah.
after. So she continues to go to school. She has to get driven. Like, she's not very mobile for a very long period of time.
There's surgery and a few screws and
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, yeah. So that was a big thing, and we laugh about it now because I have the identical scar from her driveway, not because she was chasing me, she was sleeping, but on the opposite foot in the exact same break. But so she did all that, continued going in school. Then she got a job, and then she got another job, and then she worked, I think, 3 jobs at one point. Then she enrolled in college, as you had said, and I did
Yeah.
go with her. I did pay, and I did go with you. I will own that, and fine. I want to tell everybody it was Finance 101 was the first course, and I lasted till midterms.
Accounting 101.
Accounting 101. And the teacher, who was so lovely,
She was.
if I had just made nonsensical I might have passed, but I got a 48, and that was the highest she could bring me based on what I wrote, because like I just don't get numbers, period. So, but that's when I concluded, right? So, you went to school, you worked all of those jobs, you went to school. Sometimes, getting home at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and then being up at 6 the next morning, and it was just a constant go. And you were in that state because yes, you had a bit of a lull when we relocated from Ontario to Newfoundland, because there was a bit
I
of
took a
time.
semester off. Yeah.
Yeah, there was just a little bit of time where you were just working and not in school. And so all of this, she almost finished her diploma, but we relocated back to Newfoundland, and then she decided to apply for a job at this university. Now, when you said you applied for this job at the university, you got a job there. I wanted people to understand it wasn't like you just got a job there. You went in and handed in an application. It was like, here, come work at the university. Like she was working with a bookkeeping firm. She was working for another sort of financial institution, like several financial institutions. And plus her knowledge got her into that role. And then you've been with that university in varying capacities for 11
10
years?
years.
10, it'll be 11 years in March. So then you decided to look into university, and you started going to university and worked full time, sometimes at other jobs or other commitments. You always have 1,000 things that are going on at the same time. Like, I can't do it. I get tired just thinking of it. But put yourself through university to get your BA. And I feel like that
BBA. Not that it really
BBA.
matters.
BBA, yes, Bachelor in Business Administration. And I think it's important to put that in context, because it was like you didn't take time off or get loans or anything like that. Because you didn't have that available to you, you did all of those things. The drive, and I think this is somewhat slightly new information for me. I always wondered where the drive came from. Like, we talk all the time, but I didn't
We do.
know it was still from a lack of not feeling good enough. And I do also remember you beginning to try to discount and discredit the whole getting your BBA, and like, well, what's a BBA? Anybody can get a BBA. Like
Well, I
that.
always felt that I was behind. That's the key thing. Like when I graduated grade 12, you were the one that put it in frame. I wanted nothing to do with it. I wouldn't go celebrate. I wouldn't go to the prom that they had. I wouldn't. None of those things was I ever. I always felt that. Well, most people finish grade 12 when they are, X years old. So big deal. I finished it. I'm X years behind. Finished the certificate in college. Well, yeah, I should have. Big deal, a certificate. I should have had that done. So as my completion of my degree was approaching, in my early 40s, what do I have to be proud of at 40 something that I'm just finishing an undergrad?
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
would.
anyone else in my life, I would not apply this logic to anyone else in the world or anyone else in my life. But these
This is
were
just for you.
the just for me, and these are the thoughts that would not ever stop.
So does my question next is: does Cindy ever deserve grace?
Well, and I mean, sure she does, right? Logically, I know that. Logically,
Okay, let me change the question. Does Cindy get any grace now?
I don't think that it's grace because over the years I have learned to give myself lots of grace. The celebratory pride that comes along with these achievements. There's always, and finishing that undergraduate degree did so much more for me than the textbooks and the theory and all the wonderful things and knowledge that I gained. But it was that final straw of thinking, is it ever good enough?
Hmm.
And realizing that I don't know, gave me this sense of release. It doesn't have to be good enough for anyone.
Well, I could tell you, like, yes, right?
And I will tell my friends that, my family that, I just could not seem to do it for myself. And, it has a lot to do with spending those formative years being the example of what not to be and everyone giving up on you. There was a little bit of spite that led me to be like, what, am I good enough now? And for who?
Spite's a
Really?
powerful thing, especially for
Well,
you. For you.
especially for me, yeah.
I remember us driving and you just sort of really just unloading the fact that you didn't want to go.
So my convocation, yeah, I wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Nothing. And I'm so
Like,
glad that I went. It was such a wonderful
I
experience.
think you also knew that there was just no universe or timeline or dimension.
No,
You were like, you didn't have to enjoy it, but you were going. And like, for me, I find those particular events so boring and stuffy. And it was the moment for me was always leading up to before you walk the stage. I was watching you because you were in my line of vision, a few rows down, I think, and way at the other end, and just feeling that sort of sense of like you didn't have it, but I think I have always had, and your mom have always had enough pride and celebratory sort of things to make up for everybody, if you will, because I see that what you did is not just good enough, but like against all odds, right? And I also want to point out to we have said a couple of times that people had counted her out. People had counted her out, but also told her that they had counted you out. And
oh
you
yes, of course.
through particular family members that, you're the example of what not to be and things like that. So it wasn't just speculation from your part, like you had cold hard facts that this was happening.
Yeah.
So you finished your BA, you convocated, I was there, it was wonderful, it was beautiful. The whole day was beautiful. We have some great pictures. Um, you started your master's, and which I think is just another incredible thing because it's just all of the things that you're doing now in your life. It's just something you didn't think you'd ever be able to do, but you're doing
Absolutely.
it. So you realize after, I want to talk about this a little bit. You realize after that your drive had been based on wanting to achieve being good enough.
Hmm.
But then when you achieved your BBA and you convocated, you realized that you still didn't feel like you were good. Where are we at
Yeah.
with that now?
It's a work in progress because I think that, knowledge is power and realizing it. And for the past 15 years, it's been one more job, one more course, one more, one more, one more. It's just been this invisible finish line that I didn't even really know was there. But I think subconsciously now I realize more than ever what I thought was going to come with completing that degree. And when it didn't come, it really forced me to sort of look inwards and figure out what is this all about. And, you know, through my years of working, the one comment that I always receive from coworkers, from supervisors, is just if you just had a little bit of confidence in yourself, you could, do more, be more. And I struggle with that be more thing because a job title does never, will never define me. And that's the interesting thing. This drive that I had to finish the degree never had anything to do with job title, never had anything to do with paycheck. Um, I went into management a little bit hesitantly and glad that I did enjoy the job, but I don't even know where I was going with this, but just the idea that I'm trying to remind myself that when I walk into a room, I deserve space too. I consciously find myself in meetings reminding myself that I do have something to contribute. And I think that many people often walk into situations in their life with ego first, and I've always been very conscious not to do that, almost to a detriment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there was a period in my life where I thought my imposter syndrome actually helped fuel me to be better. but I'm realizing more and more that all it's ever done is just hold me back. And I find that I'm a little bit more willing to take some chances, a little bit more willing to do this today is really very difficult for me because I see my life as no different than anyone else. See anything that I've done as being, if anything, it's the opposite. So why would I talk about the things that I've done when I failed so often? That's really the crux of it all. When I think back to those years where I was a high school dropout, drug addict, all of the things, I was just such a mess I feel like if I had never, what?
You didn't stay that way.
No,
You couldn't. It's very easy for someone to stay that way, to
and I
lean
do
into the fact
realize
that
that.
people
Yeah,
discount you or don't expect anything from you, and just lean into the drugs or that lifestyle and continue to spiral. But you did not.
yeah,
That's what you did different, because there's plenty of people out there who found themselves in your situation in their younger years who never were able to dig themselves out, right? You dug yourself out.
yeah.
You decided to go back to school. You were intentional about deciding to get your actual high school diploma and not your GED because you needed those credits potentially. But even, which is funny because even in that moment, you probably never imagined yourself to be going to college. Might have been a thought of like, I'd like to, but I just don't know if that was in your spectrum of imagining it at that moment.
No, in that moment, it was definitely, well, if I wanted to down the road, maybe. And again, it would have, I assumed college would have been it. University was
Yes.
something that always felt completely out of reach for me because, you know, the financial realities of it, if I hadn't
Mhm.
done it the way that I did it, I don't know that it would have ever happened. So, anyway, I just, that's why things like this are really difficult for me. It's really difficult for me to walk into a meeting or anywhere in life. It's not just work, it's personal. Accepting that, opposite of whatever an ego is not the answer either. I don't have to walk in and think that I'm the best in the room, but it's okay to walk in and trust myself enough to speak. And
That's
that's been amazing.
that's
Yeah.
been amazing to watch. Like the journey for me. And I still think that what you've achieved in life and how you've turned things around for yourself and just where you are socioeconomically versus the very, poverty stricken Cindy of 16-year-old, right? And how you just never thought that that was a life that you could achieve some semblance of like financial stability and security and all of those things. You did that. Yeah, you had some cheerleaders in your way, in your corner, but you did
I,
it,
yeah.
right? And in the BBA and the convocation, like you did all those 15 years. I went to one course with you. Actually, I went to two. I failed that one too. The second one. Do you remember that? Do you remember the business law course?
I do, yeah. I've
Uh,
forgotten about that one.
yeah, went to that one too. But like I went for I think 4 weeks, failed, and was like, I'm out. Like you're good now. So you brought yourself to school all the time. You kept enrolling into those courses. You switched to university. You're the person who applied to the job to start with, right?
Hmm.
So like, like you did all of this stuff. And I think so I think the disconnect sometimes in this conversation is I look at it as how you completely turned your life around, right? And I think where the audience is at a disadvantage, maybe, is that they didn't get to watch every little piece, right? And let me tell you something, people who are watching. Watching Cindy put her mind to something is like so many analogies that none I can use. So, but I'll just say this is that she's extremely driven. And like, I didn't quite realize that the drive was simply from you didn't feel like you were good enough. I thought it was
That's
because you.
only something I've really realized, like I said, in the past few months. That was
Mm,
as much because you have asked me that many times. What is it that keeps you driven? What is it that kept you, enrolling in those courses? What is it that keeps you from making the choices you make in everything in your life? And I really, if you think about it, was never able. I don't know. It's something inside me. It's something inside me. It's something inside me. And that whole experience with coming to that convocation and like audience, I had a full meltdown that day, full and complete, total meltdown, and it was so eye-opening for me because I was forced to ask myself, when are you going to be good enough for yourself? And that changed everything. And recently, those pictures, that I came across in the box that I found those pictures in, throughout that journey of that early adult life, I had lived in an emergency shelter for a little while. And in the box of pictures, I also found a diary that I kept while I lived in that shelter. And it was mind blowing to read through now at 40 something years old.
She's 42.
Two.
Yeah, I had to pause for a second. I was like, I'm 44. She's just under 2 years younger than me. Or I'm just under 2 years older than you, is what I think I was trying to say there.
So reading through that was one of the first times in a really long time that because you have these memories and you change and you grow. And I was jokingly say that I feel like I have someone else's memories in my head from those days because that's not who I am. And reading through that diary made me realize just how broken I was. And it was this realization of every choice I made, everything I did in my broken years was, in some attempt to please everyone else. And what a way to live, right?
It's not a way to live.
Well, and who did I actually please with all of my decisions?
Well, but I mean, an extraordinary amount of pressure to apply to a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, 17-year-old, like whatever age you were throughout that whole sort of era of your life. You always had perceived pressure, but actual pressure as well, right? And like, I just don't know how many people could go through what you had went through, plus having some underlying mental health issues at that time and not spiral,
And I
right?
think that's it. Like we're not talking about a lot of the truth things sort of that happen because I don't want to discuss the intimate details of my family life and those sorts of things. But when I look back on it and I think about, the realities of intergenerational trauma and the impact that this can have on young people, I think that people talk about, oh, there's so much more mental health these days. And, oh, there's so many more diagnoses. It's like, no, we're just talking about it more. We're
Yeah.
just, we're not stuffing it down. And people talk about how Gen Z doesn't party as much anymore and all these kinds of things. And it's like, well, because they're able to find a little bit of self-worth and manage their emotions and regulate themselves and recognize how, they don't need to be sleeping around with random men to make themselves feel good because they're allowed to talk about how they feel. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just all those sort of pile on things that just pile on to young people.
It's
That,
us elder millennials who created that space for them.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And we can talk about how much space was created for them for sure. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's a perfect,
It's not perfect.
but
Nothing's perfect. No
nothing.
generation is perfect, right? And I don't know if like we paved the way. I think we might have made a cow path
Yeah,
for
someone
that.
needs to save it.
Yeah. So,
So we
but
do it.
I think I love the vulnerability that you shared, and I love that you totally started to get comfortable
Oh, I
around
know.
the time I thought you would. And I love that I know you. I do wish, and I've always said this to you, and I will always say this to you. I wish you could see yourself through my eyes. And I say that because to me, 16-year-old Cindy was lost and broken, rightfully so. And somehow, regardless of what the drive was or where it came from, I watched you take nothing and create this incredibly beautiful life for yourself. But above that, what we haven't talked about is just who the person you became
And
is.
that
And
was
that's
what I was
probably the,
getting to when you were asking me to, who are you now? Like, because I don't start with how my title is,
yeah,
and it's the person that I am that matters so much more to me than any of all of the rest of it. And I think that that's always been there. It's just the pressures of the world, and that's why I always struggled so much with celebrating these things too, because it was like, okay, who cares? That's not what makes me who I am. Who cares? And that also played a part in it. To celebrate these things would in some way have to mean that I was, you know,
we're
better
celebrating.
than someone else, which I'm not,
But I
right?
don't think that that's the goal of celebration.
No, I know, and I realize all of that now.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think the goal was that you were worth celebrating.
yeah,
And you always have been. And when, I don't know if or when you'll get to the point where you can actually sit back and realize that you are good enough. I have
we're worth.
hope for you because we, we both have seen just immense growth over the last 25 years of our friendship. And
Yeah,
we're not the same people. Like you said that, like
no,
you're reading that diary, and I can only imagine, like only imagine what
the
was
world will never see it.
no, and that's fine. I would never ask to see it, but I could only imagine what actually it contained.
Yeah,
Because I remember the girl who would have written that journal or that
yeah,
diary. And I remember how that girl processed information.
yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm just like, that would be a ride to go on. But I mean, even more so for you because you're not that person anymore. You don't often, or period, compute the
No,
same way, right? So yeah, I think the person who you have become is someone who I deem extremely inspirational, worthy of immense celebration, and just wholesome and good. You are so often a guidepost in my life because of how your brain, heart, and mind work. Well, I guess your brain and your mind are the same things ish, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
Like how they work, how they function. And I know that if I have something that I think may be slightly questionable, I will come to you and I will say, so this is a thought I had. And then you're going to say, you could do that, or you could try this and, whatever, right? I just think, I wish that, I believe that other people can see it. And one thing I want the audience to know is also on top of that, throughout Cindy's life, however, despite even her younger years, people gravitated towards you. They still do because you are a light. You have always been a light, right? Yeah, even on top of Atlantic Place, 26
something.
years ago. Yeah, 26 years ago. Yes, you were sad, and that's what I saw, but there was something about you that pulled me in. And I think that that's just that natural beauty that you always possessed. And to see who you are today at 42 and just know how you move through life and how
And
you
that's the stuff
view,
that matters. That's
yeah,
the we spend so much time just worried about the milestones and worried about what people think and worried about how our decisions are going to be perceived. That I think if I could shout a message to the world, it would just be live for yourself. And not in the selfish, I'm not going to care about anybody else kind of way, but you know what's best for your life, and it's as simple as that. And
mm,
yes, I'm still considerate of other people's feelings, and yes, but I believe that that comes down to communication. The people that I
yeah,
care enough about, I will communicate very clearly with. And some people find that hurtful, some people find it abrasive, some people find it off putting, but it's the greatest way that I find that I can put kindness into the world while protecting myself. You deserve happiness too. So you have to make the choices that make sense for you. Because no matter what decision you make, someone's going to judge you. That's something else that I really kind of came to terms with. No, Matt, there's not one choice that you could make that you wouldn't find someone who's going to judge it. So if that's your option, why not just make the decisions that make you happy?
Yeah, because they're going to judge you if you don't, and they're going to judge you if you do. Like
Yeah, yeah. External validation is an impossible feat
it is
and
because
approval.
my truest things I've learned in life is that you're always going to be the monster in somebody's story, regardless if
Absolutely.
you're always a kind person. Something you're going to do is going to be perceived as being the
Yep,
monster. And then the other thing is that what people think of you is none of your business.
absolutely.
And I this show, we're at 100 episodes now, which is big, and why I wanted you to come on, because I love this. I love this conversation. Prior to 2023 November, like I actually was September, like things started to shift, was the fear of putting myself on the internet
Uh-huh. That
and
is
like
my fear.
actually having people listen to me talk, um, and all of the things, the feelings, the emotions, the fears, the insecurities that go along with that, all of that was like, this was not for me.
Yeah,
Yet, you know that who my heroes have always been and what I would have always loved to do. And like, I have learned that I don't care if people see the podcast and they're like, oh, that's cringe or whatever. That I don't care.
yeah.
Like, I'm sure people do. I'm sure people will
People
have seen
will always.
it, but I'm like, that's not my business. I get such great joy out of having this sort of platform to share stories of adversity, and that's how I text the pressure, non-pressure to Miss Cindy to come on. It was the 100th episode, so
Yeah,
very momentous, important to me. But also the very reason I created this podcast is because we both agree that people who have gone through adversity are the kindest people that you can meet.
absolutely. Every time.
And my catchphrase that I put on my forums and things like that is like, I want to have stories with people who have faced great adversity, overcome that, to
Yeah.
come out and to find their own version of success.
And when you started this podcast and asked me multiple times if I would be your guest, the answer was always, well, maybe when I finish this, maybe when I do that,
It
maybe when
was.
I. Always I thought I had sort of held you off now until my master's was finished. But when my master's finished, nothing's going to change. There's no reason for me to wait until I'm good enough to come on here. That is why I
Absolutely.
ultimately said yes.
Good. I'm glad that I applied the right amount of messaging to get to Cindy's heart. But yeah, I mean, and it also comes down to what's the definition of being good? What's your definition of being good enough? Is it a feeling? Is it a status? Is it like, how would you define it?
Um, I I don't have a definition for it yet because I haven't fully found it yet. I'm still in the infancy of accepting that I deserve it, but maybe when I find it again, I'll come on.
Maybe, for sure. I'd love to have you back on. But the thing is, then, we have to realize is that you've been chasing something that you don't know what it is this entire time,
Yeah,
right? And so, how will you know when you found it?
but I mean, that's a great question because in some ways I do think that I found it. I just can't define it. That's
Okay.
sort of that's going to look different for everyone. And I think that that's something that this idea that things have to look the same for people, I've never subscribed to it. I've never believed it. I've never, as contradictory as it is to everything that I'm saying, I never felt that my actual value was in a degree or a job or, those sorts of things. I always believed that it was the person you were, the way you treated other people, sort of all of those things. So who was I doing it for? You know what I mean? Like, I think at the end of the day, the truth is I was doing it, for me. I think I also don't love leaning into the idea that somehow this degree made me good enough, made me better, made me any of those things because you don't need those things to be an incredible human being.
That's the truest fact in the world, right?
1,000.
I think the baseline to being good enough is existing.
Yeah.
And to level that up, it's to lead with kindness.
Yeah,
Whatever that looks like for you within your boundaries and limitations, right?
absolutely.
'Cause
And I think that when all the, thinking about doing this podcast and thinking about coming on, and when I think about overcoming the adversity, is it the degree? Is it the job? Is it all of those things that shows that I overcame it? Or is it how I started living my life? I think it's how I started living my life.
it's always been that. Because I think that the achievements I think are wonderful and amazing because of like what you've done compared to who you thought you could ever be, right? However, none of those things could have really happened if you didn't make a choice to live your life in a specific way, to shift the path that you were on and to find some sense of self, right? In there. And like the same can be said about myself in 2017, right? It's making a choice to do better for you. And what better means is so subjective. And that's why I always make sure I point out it's to define their own version of success.
That's
Because
exactly my point. Yeah. You cannot live your life by someone else's version of success.
exactly. And what I mean for that for people at home, I probably have said this before, but like one person's version of success is that they actually have a roof over their head and running water and food in their fridge. Maybe it's just ramen noodles, but that could be their version of success. Whereas another person's version of success is that their abuser is behind bars and they can sleep at night because
Yeah.
that the justice took place. Whereas another person's success could be that they're a multi-billionaire. There's so many varying degrees, and we can't just assume that success defines one thing. I feel successful in my life having reached 100 episodes. I've earned nothing from this podcast except all of the wonderful connections that I've made, the things that I've learned, the books that I've read, the experiences. That's my version of success. Yes, would I love to be at a point where, the podcast earns me enough that I can focus solely on that? Sure, that would be lovely. But I'm not going to stop if it doesn't. Like, I just think about this 100 episodes, getting to have a conversation with my bestie. Like, how sweet is that? And I also think about it. I find it funny because I think about like driving around Ontario in the car and the countless hours that we spend together driving
Uh-huh.
the back roads of
The back
Ontario.
road. Yeah. Getting
Best times.
lost.
Getting lost, listening to country music, just having the best time, living our best lives. If someone had stopped us or whatever and just said to us at that time, like, what has it been? Like 15 years later now, maybe? I don't know. Time's a construct. I can't keep track. Uh, But yeah, like if someone had said, I'm like, Curtis is going to have a podcast in the future, and on his 100th episode, you're going to be a guest on it talking about your life.
We would have laughed and laughed. Well, first
We,
of all, we would have said, "What's a podcast?" And laughed.
we would have said, what is a podcast?
And how do we
Yes,
get out of here because we don't have a GPS?
yes, yes. Or our GPS just takes us in circles.
Yes, yeah,
If
early
you
days.
remember, was it a TomTom or a Garmin?
One of them.
Well, it ended up out the window, if you remember in
It did.
Montreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we weren't getting anywhere. But yeah, that's true. The podcast thing, it would have been very much like, what is a podcast?
Yeah.
What is a YouTube channel? Like,
Like
really?
I remember, absolutely, I remember seeing an episode of news talking about this new YouTube thing. And I
Yes.
remember a friend of ours telling us that apps were going to be the way of the future. And I remember thinking, yeah, very much.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're just aging ourselves.
We are dating ourselves, but that's fine. We've both said our ages in this episode.
Yeah.
But like, it's funny to think that just not that long ago,
It is
the
wild.
medium was a mainstream, what we're doing right now. And now it's such a saturated medium as well, right? Like I think
Absolutely.
I don't know if they've reached the million, like, but they're really high, close to reaching a billion podcasts. Thing is though, some people start podcasts and they do like 10 episodes and that's it. Some people have like thousands of episodes. And I'm happy I have 100. I get to spend that time with you. So I have one last question for you, my sweet, sweet, wonderful human being.
What's that?
As we know, this world is filled with a lot of vulnerable women and girls
Yeah.
who are often exposed to a whole myriad of contrasting messages, body image about
Yeah.
what they should be, what their values defined as, trad wives, the whole situation, blah, blah, blah. You being who you are today and living the life that you have lived and achieving all of the things in personhood, in livelihood, all of that. What is one thing that you would want them to know?
I mean, so different for everyone. And it's
Yeah.
really easy for me to say, make decisions for yourself. But
Mhm.
so much easier said than done. But they don't have to be the big things. So when I think my big message would be start living for yourself, whatever that means. So if it is someone who's in a powerless situation, maybe you have to reclaim that power one teeny tiny piece at a time. Or maybe you're someone who's really lucky in life and has the ability to have all the power today. But I think if anything, be truthful with yourself and honest about what it is that you want out of life. Let that guide your decision making, not what the world wants from you, what someone else wants from you. It has to come from within.
And I love that part too about like one piece at a time. Because we so often look at the big picture and become overwhelmed or just defeated because it's such a
If I
longer.
if I had been working and we use my degree as an example, if I had started this journey with a university degree in mind, I would have been completely overwhelmed and quit long before I ever started. For full
Mm,
context, or whatever for the audience, it was I started working on a college certificate. When I finished that, I started working on a college diploma. When I came to university, I started working on a certificate, then a diploma. Like it was all in these little manageable chunks because if I had once thought, oh, I'm going to go get a degree, absolutely would have quit before I started because it would have felt impossible. So whatever your goals are,
show up.
just show up.
Yeah.
And none of my life has been linear, and it's just a big messy squiggly line, and that's okay. Life is messy. That's it. And don't beat up on yourself when it looks messy because you're not the only one.
And what I love too about you is that if from the outside looking in, because you've said it so many times now, but from the outside looking in, Cindy like is the epitome of somebody who looks like they have their shit together. Like it just
I've heard that
that,
before, but I mean, yeah,
but
sometimes.
this is how you're
Not for all
perceived.
people.
What?
And so not for all people, but again,
Okay,
opinions are
fine,
what
but
they
like
are.
people who aren't close with you, just looking outside, just looking in, they're perceiving that you have your shit together, you have this great job, you got all these things going on. But you've mentioned it so many times already here that life is messy.
Like very messy. I was actually at a dinner before I came here, and people were having conversations about their dining room table and all the messy things that end up on their table until companies come in. And I was just sort of sitting back and listening and hearing all of the different random things that people found themselves putting on their table. And I piped up and I was like, I don't feel so alone. I think that we all believe that we're the only ones. I always had this idea that everyone else somehow had it figured out, and I just
Mm.
couldn't quite unlock it. But I think that that's a pretty common feeling among a lot of people.
Yeah, and most people don't have it figured out, and if they say they do, there's a high chance that they're lying,
Or
just not in
they're
touch
not
with me.
tuned in, I think, maybe sometimes.
Yes, we said the same thing, just different words. Because I don't think you can figure out life. I think you can figure out what you might want out of life, but life's going to life.
Life's gonna life, and what you want today might not be what you want tomorrow. That's okay. Don't lock yourself
Absolutely,
in. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. And I just think, yeah, it's one of those things. When you look at, I think we make just such great prime examples of people who 25 years ago were just so different and processed information and emotions and everything so completely different. And today we are very similar in so many different ways, also very different. This is what makes us our
Absolutely.
friendship so funny.
And 25
And
years from now, we'll be different again. And people look at aging as such an awful thing. My 30s were so much better than my 20s. Every decade seems to bring this, I get this whole new zest for life. And I think that it's also subjective, but when I think about the experiences that I've had and the growth and the learning and all of those things, I hope to never lose that desire. And it really can only get better, but different. So 25 years from now, when you and I are sitting down doing whatever version of this exists, like, yeah, we'll just be completely different people all over again.
oh my gosh, but I see 25 years from now, front porch on a swing, me crocheting, you knitting, or whatever the new technology to make that happen is. Like, I don't know, like reaching in the sky like a crazy person, like pulling threads that are non-existent. And then Amazon ships your final product to you once you put it together virtually. But whatever that is, I just think that we're going to be as reflective as we always have been. Because we've always been very reflective people. And and I just, as we close out the show, I think my longest podcast yet, but I don't care. It's my 100th. I can do what I want. And it's with my bestie. I think one of the things that I want you to know, and I know you know this, but I'm like, I love growing older with you in my life. I love what we have, all of the memories that we have, and we have lots, some that would not ever air
Tell
on.
the real good stories.
You'll never get the real ones, the real good and juicy ones. But like, I just think, the next 25 years, you said the same thing. My 40s have been better than my 30s. My 30s were better than my 20s. The only thing about my 40s is that I hurt more physically, but I love life more. So it's just like one of those things. I was like, okay, so aging is one of
on the young.
Yes, well, exactly. I feel like if I could have my 20-year-old body back with who I am now, I'd be unstoppable. Like, that's what I'd be. Well, this has been an absolute wonderful treat for me. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. Thank you to God for helping me formulate the words I needed to formulate to touch your heart to come on. Thank you for, I think I just said this, but like, thank you for coming on. Like, but at the next level, like, if you understand what I mean, like, just like the fact that you overcame your own like fears and everything and nervousness to just be here. And for always being just incredibly supportive friends and being behind me for all my pipe dreams. Because there's been many. This one I have follow through on, but like, there's been many. For everyone at home, remember the words of Cindy and look at what your life is, what you want your life to be. And just take a little piece at a time. And showing up for yourself and being consistent. We talked so much about what you've done, and if you've seen previous episodes of the podcast, I've talked about the exact same thing. It's just about showing up every day for yourself and making small decisions.
Expecting to fall, and that's okay.
Yes, the failing is the fun part, really, because yes, it doesn't feel so fun in the moment, but when you look back, you realize you actually took so much away from that failure. Like, you learned so much. And I will leave you with one piece of advice. If you have the opportunity in life, find yourself a Cindy. Yeah, because everyone needs a Cindy in it to be that blessed. All right. I'm not going to get too mushy. I'm surprised you didn't cry. I'm actually surprised I didn't cry. So I'm like, I'm proud of us. But yeah, so until next time, everybody, thank you for tuning in and get out there and live your wildest dreams. And thank you so much for being here, Cindy. Talk to you again.
Thank you.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksimms.com or visit cksimms.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.